imagine these kinds of fires that we're seeing here happening in a part of Africa or Southeast Asia, where you have groups that are already in a tense relationship, where different ethnic groups, different religious orientations, who have arranged themselves to stay out of each other's way. And then you get events like this, suddenly they're not out of each other's way, they'll be crossing paths. And then you get military conflicts by the push.
The reason I wanted you on tonight is because you make this overwhelming, overarching point that the political response to climate change is probably too late, and it's therefore going to be essentially anti-democratic.
The problem is that we are running out of time. And we often hear these arguments about now you have 12 years left and now we have this or that. And then the skeptics will say, oh, you also said that 12 years ago and we're still here and so on. That's, of course, because it's not like there's one day and suddenly it will be over. It is just the longer we wait, the more abrupt the change has to be. So a transformation of our economy and our energy systems that might have been less painful if we had started 20 years ago, 30 years ago, if we have to do that in a very short time, it becomes extremely painful. And then comes the question, can you carry through such painful transformations through the normal democratic system? Yeah, of course, my message is not to say that we should therefore go out and tear down democracy. My point is just to say, if we really try to imagine that world where we are going, actually start to solve it, how does that look? Internationally, we have now a negotiation format which is in some sense hyper-democratic. All the world's 200 states have a veto on our climate agreement, and we have an institution with no teeth, and it's all very, very soft. The United Nations Security Council could in principle tomorrow decide that climate change is a threat to international peace and security. And then it's within their competences to decide, and therefore you are doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this. This is how we deal with it.
In this country, the blowback would be intense because we have a huge amount of climate change denialism.
Exactly.
Various governments. And I'm wondering if they dug their heels in and said no, in fact, if the population said no, what happens next?
Yeah, that's step two. That's how the democratic prize at the domestic level is happening. If there was something that was decided internationally by some more centralized procedure, and every country was told, this is your emission target, it's not negotiable, we can actually take military measures if you don't fulfill it, then you would basically have to get that down the throat of your population, whether they like it or not.
Climate activists don't like what you're saying.
No, because it's not so nice to be associated with something undemocratic. And I've been on Danish television where they try to push me to say, isn't it really the activists who are undemocratic? Is the activism, the Extinction Rebellion, just shutting down London? Isn't that the threat to democracy? And we're going to hear that more and more in the future, because we will probably see more and more radical action as the situation gets more and more urgent. We might even see climate terrorism at some point, but that's only the small problem, because these will be marginal groups. The big problem is what happens the day when the system comes around to saying, okay, now we have to solve it first, and we have to do it very fast because we forgot to do it in 30 years, and now we have to do it very swiftly.